that makes up the difference.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, it was appropriated by vote at the FTF of $20,047,960. That is the number.
Right, but then.
So I want to know, in essence, you have changed the appropriation.
We haven't changed it.
Well, then how did you get to $2,007,075?
The appropriation is 24.9.
The total appropriation, if you add the two numbers, and that's what we asked for and received from the solicitor, stating, that the language says that they are two separate numbers. It's a combination of the two, and that you can vote a local appropriation than whatever they get from the state, because what you're asking for is you're asking for it both ways. When the state gives you more money, you get to keep the more money. It doesn't come off the number that was appropriated, and that's right, because they do it by statute, because it's not to back it down. But that's why at the financial town meeting, I believe it was done and separated out. So we're going to give you the local appropriation, then the state gives it. If you didn't get the full state appropriation, then you find a way to make the cuts for whatever the diminished number was. Because that's what happens to us on our side. We go into the same process without having a fixed number. We do a budget, and in the past, we've taken the hit, and we've taken the hit before, when we had to come up with the entire sum of money to cover whatever the hit was. Well, you got the money back because you got the stabilization, but you're saying because there was a 24/9 appropriation, when it came out, your appropriation went higher on the local, and whatever money you got back was in addition to that. And that's where your numbers that were originally submitted, I believe, to the budget committee, showed the increase by the amount that your federal aid, that your state aid was cut, and you put that into the local appropriation, because your assumption is you were entitled to that difference, and then work the number from there.
But the ERA money is federal money for education.
Federal money for education to replace your loss in state aid.
Well, that's what we're trying to ascertain as to the amount. That 293 says ERA stabilization is for education. For education.
Yes.
Okay, so, but it's accounting in 0809. It was on the operational side or the town side of the budget, not the school department side, in the sense of how the money came in.
My issue about 2008, 2009 was if you had a problem with what the appropriation was in 08, 09, then that should have been taken up in 9, 10.
We are, well, Frank, because your audit report just came out in January, so it's now March. We think it's pretty due notice. We didn't know for sure until we saw the audit report from the town.
We came in under appropriation. We didn't have an issue in 2009.
And that's why we're here now. We're telling you that we believe there's a legitimate issue here and a discrepancy over how we believe that the bottom line number is what the town that we're entitled to, 24.9. We cannot, my original question still stands. The appropriation is less, the total appropriation for 9-10 is less, as is the operation budget for local. It's less. No matter how you cut it, no matter what we say happened at the town meeting, those are the numbers that were voted. And they're less, they're not $1 more than the previous year. And that's why we're bringing it to you. We're just here to let you know we have a problem, and that's pretty much it. We're just here to notify the council.
Justin Katz, Arbitrator. There are a couple of additional items that may be relevant to this. First of all, under the statute 16723, the language that each community shall contribute local funds to the school committee, not less, in its contribution. And that maintenance of effort can be calculated on student, on pupil account. My recollection at the financial town meeting is that the lower number was calculated on the understood enrollment for the coming year.
It was on a 10-year number that the budget committee has.
Correct.
On a year-to-year.
A second item, also in the budget appropriation at the FTM for the school committee, were explicit instructions that additional money from the state or federal government would be deducted from the local appropriation. When the error money came in, the school, and I discussed this with Mr. Fiore, the school committee decided that that could be simply ignored. Fine, nobody sued, we're past that now, I guess, but that language in that FTM vote seems to me to be relevant here in how we calculate what we call the appropriation.
The problem we seem to have is we do this, and we do it every year, is we pass a resolution at the financial town meeting saying any additional funds, will come back. Then the way the funds are appropriated, it is stated in the appropriation that they are in addition to and can't be used. So the way the appropriation takes place by the state, my understanding is that it makes our resolution null and void because it says it cannot be used to back down.
Okay.
And that's the problem we always seem to have. If the appropriation, the additional appropriations were made and were allowed to be done, then our financial town meeting resolution would allow us to deduct. But the state says it's to supplement, not to supplant. And that's how they pass their additional funding, and that's why it's never been able to be a reduction in aid when they get extra money.
Okay. Well, it seems to me it should still be relevant to this discussion on what the actual appropriation was at the FDM.
We agree, because the appropriation is $400,000 less than the previous year, or $800,000 less if you include the error money. We concur.
Well, and that number again was calculated off of...
No, this is what was voted on at the town meeting.
Right, but the vote at the town meeting, I thought, incorporated a deduction for
No.
decreased enrollment.
It's $20,047,000 and $960 was the appropriation.
Yes.
That's correct. And we concur.
Okay, and I'm lost in all.
Bill, or, yeah. At what point would you be in a position to reach a conclusion that within our time frame of the May 8th meeting, that you can be within the cap, or will you be coming back to the council saying, I think we need to go for a waiver?
I think, personally, I would recommend to the committee, if I was advising them, I think that the debt service should not be considered for the schools as part of the cap, number one. But that's how you handle that, that's the council. To answer your question, the committee, again, will be based on our best estimate of what 4.5 is. The committee will be there, or start work on it on April 6th. And the committee's going to have to make some tough choices if there are no concessions, as I said earlier. And the committee has all my recommendations in front of them. None of them are good. Just like you have, when Jim presents you with recommendations, none of them are good because of the reduction in revenue. But the committee realizes that it has to be at the cap or under the cap by the meeting. So we hope to be there, and I don't want to speak for the committee, it could be one meeting. They could enact the number, and then we work backwards, to get to the number. But at least for the public meeting, it will be at 4.5%. That's going to be my recommendation to the committee, that we then have time so we're not pressured to make those cuts. That is, we'll make them, but we'll have more data as far as that goes. So it could be one meeting, it could be a couple of school committee meetings. We had shot for April 15th to be in under the cap, but since we're being pushed by the budget committee, we'll try to speed that up. Because we want the people to see on the docket that we're under the cap.
Thank you, Don. Leonard Wright, I appreciate the whole conversation you've had this evening, having been on the budget committee for 2.5 years, the business manager of the school department for 2.5 years, and 3.5 years on the school committee. I fully appreciate all of the numbers, but there's, if I can talk in baseball, if first base is we don't know what the base number is, and we should settle that, and second base is we don't know what we're going to get from the state and state aid, and we should settle that before we move on.